Evening and welcome to another London Ballet Circle in Conversation. Whether you're a veteran of these conversations or joining us for the very first time, we're absolutely delighted you could be here tonight. When it was announced earlier this year that Alexandra Campbell would become the new artistic director of the Royal Academy of Dance, there were mixed feelings in the ballet world. Obviously, great happiness and excitement for Alexandra that the RAD had made this fantastic choice for its new artistic director, but also sadness for those of us who've been sitting in the audience at the Royal Opera House for so many years watching Alexandra entertain us, make us laugh, make us cry with his wonderful dancing. And we had to realize that that part of his career had come to an end. But this is an exciting new opportunity, and it's going to be terrific. And tonight, with Gerard Dowler leading the conversation, we're going to hear about this young man who came from Australia, took on the ballet world, and is now heading up the prestigious RAD. Should make for a very interesting evening. If you have a question for Alexander, please post it in the chat box, which you'll find at the bottom of your screen, and give your first name too. And so I now turn you over to Gerard Dowler and Alexandra Campbell for this evening's In Conversation.
Thank you very much, Susan, and welcome to everybody. And I have to say, I'm absolutely delighted, Alexandra, to have been asked to speak with you tonight. I'm one of the many people who've been sitting for years watching you dance at the Royal Ballet and previously with Birmingham. And have admired you enormously. So it's a great privilege for me as well.
Well, my pleasure to be here. I was delighted to hear that you were going to be the interviewer, so the feelings are mutual.
Great. Well, it's a love-in, so there we are. We'll be happy. So, okay, Artistic Director of the Royal Academy of Dance. It's a very prestigious title. It's a very impressive title. What does that actually mean?
That's a great question, and I think one that I had to examine, I suppose, just even in the process of going for the job, and the answer to that is that it's a lot of things, and it's a lot of things, a lot of different things to a lot of different people, because the RAD has such a breadth of offering. I think that there are just so many different stakeholders and different ways that people interact with the RAD, that they're looking for different things even from the same person. But I'd say, overall, the artistic director is responsible for the artistic output from the RAD. And at the moment, the classical ballet syllabus is the big thing that we offer, and is making sure that that's appropriate and relevant and engaging for all the students and all the people who are engaging with that. And really, we're there to support teachers in their journey, and that's a very interesting and exciting thing as well, because we've got teachers who've been part of the RAD for in excess of 50 years. We've got teachers at the very beginning of their journey who we're effectively teaching from the beginning. So those two things, I'd say, would be the big standout responsibilities in the role. But really, the reason why I was so excited about being given the opportunity and went for the opportunity is that there's a real desire for the Royal Academy of Dance to open up, not just in terms of membership, but in terms of the offerings that we provide. Historically, it's been ballet. More recently, we offered Rambert grades, which is moving into contemporary dance. And I think really, what we want to do is make sure that we're representative of what the dance world and particularly the ballet world is. I in my training did RAD ballet, completed exams all the way through to advanced 2, but alongside that, I did contemporary, I did jazz, I did character dancing, which weren't RAD offerings, but absolutely supplemented my training and were vital to allowing me to become the dancer that I am. So I've spoken long. That it's a big job.
Yeah, no, I mean it sounds a very big job, and just what you said there. I mean, given that you have always been a multifaceted dancer, it wasn't just the dancing. You've got great character ability, comedy, all of that. I think that shone through as with you as a dancer. But if I can just dig down a little bit, because you were principal of the Royal Ballet, mid-season, bang, this announcement happens. Has it been a long time coming?
No, well, specifically to the RED in that role, no, it wasn't a long time coming.
Yeah.
I think I've always been interested in what happens next. I've always considered that, and I think the last few years, particularly, I've broadened, my interest and also the work that I've done.
Yeah.
So in some ways, it doesn't feel like for me personally that it came out of the blue, but it was quite a quick process when it came up and was offered, and yeah, it's still a bit of a whirlwind, to be frank. I sit here and I say I'm the artistic director of the Royal Academy of Dance, and I think, gosh, that's quite something. Takes some getting used to.
But it must. I mean, has it been a real gear change for you?
In some ways, yes. I mean, the shift of doing class every day and rehearsing towards the goal of doing a performance with that pressure that brings, having that stop sort of almost overnight was quite something. And I'd say for the first maybe 5 or 6 weeks in the role, I was happy with that. God, this feels great. I'm just doing other things and I'm very busy. I'm very busy, which is great. And then after about 5 or 6 weeks, I think, oh gosh, I haven't done really any exercise because my day to day is just sitting here and doing this and going to meetings. And I've realized that actually I was starting to feel a bit lethargic, and that was a bit of a change. So I've actually started doing class again, not every morning, but I've commandeered a studio, and it was really nice to do, actually. I think just to move and to feel connected to the art form, and I think that's something that it would be vital and it's worth doing, even just in the role, practically to be connected to it, to still do it, to be around it. I think it's important. It'd be a shame, I think, to just go into an office and just constantly write emails or worry about budgets. I think it's good to remain connected to it. So I'll strike a balance, but
I'm trying to smooth the transition a little bit.
Yeah.
But I mean, how long was this in the pipeline, as it were, specifically the RAD?
It was. It sort of came onto my radar around December. I knew this.
Oh gosh.
Yeah. So not that long ago, and had some conversations around the role once I heard that it had been advertised. I hadn't picked up on it initially, and I'd said, "Oh well, I'm still dancing, and we're doing Nutcracker at the time, and we're looking forward to doing Manon after the new year." But as I was at home for Christmas, and I suppose it gave me a bit of time to think about a number of different things, and I thought about the role a bit more and more. And one of the things I've always felt passionate about is that, even as a student at the Royal Ballet School, going into Birmingham Royal Ballet and the Royal Ballet, I always felt that I was, well, we all are advocates for the art form, and I always tried to be that in those roles. And I feel very passionate about ballet and dance in general and why people should do it. I think it's an important thing. I think more people should do it. And I realized that this might be an opportunity that would just be almost impossible to replicate the reach and the possibilities of being that advocate. So I considered more seriously, and I wasn't sure whether they would want me to apply, but they did. And quite honestly, the interview was in February. So it was very swift. I remember talking to Kevin. It must have been Kevin O'Hare, the director of the Royal Ballet. Must have been February, maybe 10th or around mid-February. And I said to his PA, I said, "Look, I'm really sorry to do this. I know he's a busy man, but I need to talk to Kevin now, almost." And she was great. She said, "Okay," and she clocked that it was an important thing, so she managed to put me in there and so what's going on? And I just said, "Look, this has come up, this has happened." What? And very quickly there, we had to sort of work out what that meant. And to be fair to the RAD, they were very open to me choosing a time that suited and worked. It just felt that when we looked at the rest of the season, we looked at what was coming up next season, that it was going to be really hard to replicate an opportunity to sort of bow out. Then in Manon, opposite, a partner I'd worked with for so many years and feel sort of very connected to, and Francesca Hayward. And I remember looking at Kevin and thinking, is it going to be that date, which is, I think, 4 months at that time? Are we doing this? Yeah, so it's not been a long time coming.
No, and no regrets.
None. And I think part of the reason why I can say that so confidently is that the final performance was, I think, more than anything I could have hoped for. In that I very much enjoyed it. I was completely overwhelmed by the response after the performance, immediately after the performance. The 3 weeks leading up to that show, where I rehearsed with Francesca, and we were coached by Alessandra Ferri, who has been in and around the Royal Ballet for a lot of the time that I've been there, but I've never actually worked with or never been coached by.
Right.
It was just such a wonderful. It felt like we were, I don't know, maybe Frankie said that I was in denial. Because we were just in rehearsal working on new things. And she was like, "Why are you worried about new stuff?" I was like, "Because it's exciting. It's fun. Let's go." And it was nice having that, new eyes on it. And Alessandra was just wonderful and encouraging us to sort of, really push ourselves in new directions and make sure that we were keeping things fresh and very us.
Yeah.
And so all of that wrapped up, I just think, I've seen, people in careers look for the perfect time and the perfect way. And although it came up quickly, and nothing in life is perfect, it felt very close to. And so I just feel very, very fortunate. So no regrets. Yeah.
That sounds very positive indeed. So in your role as artistic director, is there anything particular that you want to develop at the RAD? Because as you said, it's many things to many people and around the world. Where do you see yourself fitting into the organization, and what influence would you like to have?
Well, I think that's to be determined, and I think that's going to become apparent over the course of certainly the first year.
Yeah.
As I go sort of through a cycle, I think I'll be able to fashion something that I think, okay, this is the thing. But I do think that I could play a really big role in just advocating for ballet and dance in general. I think we've got a good opportunity to do that, being in over 80 countries. Just the reach we already have, which is all happened fairly organically, which is amazing. I think we've got an opportunity, and I think because of the things that I believe in, I think the skill set that I bring, I would like to think that I could be a really positive advocate for ballet and dance, and maybe it's too ambitious, but I would love to have an impact sort of on wider society. Certainly in the countries that I grew up in, Australia, operated in the UK predominantly, and a lot of the Western countries that I've know well. There's still plenty of stigmas around ballet and dance. I know a lot of people say, "Oh, what are you going to do to support boys and men in dance?" And I think there's plenty we can do there. I would like to do something there, but I think just more widely about the importance of ballet and dance, and that it is a real job. It can be a realistic proposition. It can be something that you pursue as a hobby, and then go on to love. There are just so many things that I think that we who are involved in ballet and dance know and love about it. But some of the perceptions, I think, for people who are maybe just on the outskirts or not in love with it as we are, we could reach out to them and make sure that they're aware, and that's what I'd love to do.
Interesting, yeah. We have a question here from Jane. It may seem a little left field to start off with, but I think it does tie in with what you're saying. Saying that Jane shares with you a passion for cricket, and Arnold Haskell saw parallels between ballet and cricket. Firstly, would you agree? And secondly, the RAD did have a partnership apparently with the NCC before lockdown. Any chance of reviving it?
Well, it has been raised because I was actually an ambassador for that project. And
Right.
it was called Dance Down the Wicket, which makes sense to cricket and ballet and dance lovers. There are absolutely parallels. I think there are a lot of parallels between ballet and sports in general. Not least just the movement. The fact that cricket is quite an unusual movement, just the way that you stand one side of the bat. When you bowl, you have to release the ball with a straight arm, which is an unusual method to propel an object. And ballet, obviously, in the turned out positions and all the strange shapes that we expect people not expect, but the rules dictate that we follow. So there are parallels, and that, and I think other partnerships I would love to revive or develop, because I think a lot of the challenges and opportunities that the organizations face are similar, and working in partnership or across organizations is I think something that could be really beneficial. So I'd like that. And if there's an opportunity to go to Lords and see a match, then that's a perk I'm willing to accept.
Are you going to be doing a lot of traveling in this role?
Yes, there will be. I think the opportunity to do a lot of things online now, exists. So perhaps not the same pressure to travel as perhaps my predecessors. But I said, they're in over 80 different countries. I think there will be opportunities. I would love, to get across as many of our members as possible, because there is something about meeting in person that can't quite be replicated online. And I think there are some opportunities to, share well and better understand, I suppose, the challenges and opportunities that exist in their particular areas. I think the RAD does it well, but it's something that I want to be mindful of and make sure that we continue to do well, is that there's information going back and forth. I don't think that we should be sort of sitting in an ivory tower and saying, this is how we do ballet and this makes sense everywhere in the world. I'd like to be able to make sure that the offerings that we have are relevant to the various different areas that we're offering them to.
Yeah. I'm going to take you all the way back to when you were an RAD boy, back in Sydney. I think you were born in Sydney. What was your experience back then, and did you have any concept of the RAD as it is as an organisation, or was then?
I think I did, and probably more so than maybe the average RAD person, because my grandmother was an RAD examiner.
Right.
And so one of the things I remember thinking was quite amazing, hearing stories of her traveling for all different parts of the world. She'd come back from Mexico and she'd say, oh, I saw a great school and they were doing this. And I thought, oh, gosh, how amazing that, that school in Mexico are doing the same grade 1 that I'm doing.
Yeah.
Even though they're so far away, and the life they lead is just different to mine. So I think I did have a concept of the RAD being not just the exercises that I was doing in the studio with my teacher, but I remember I I think I was too young to enter my first examination, so I did a sort of demonstration for an examiner. And there's a picture of me, and I'm about this big. I don't think I reach your knees. I'm just so happy. I look at it. I don't remember doing the demonstration or the exam, but I look very happy. So it was a good start.
When did you start? At what age did you start?
I was about 4 or 5.
Okay.
Apparently, I went to see an end of year performance of a school show that my grandmother was working on. Um, I don't really remember that either, but the conversation apparently over the summer took place with my dad, and I think I already played probably football, soccer, and bit of cricket. And we were talking about, extracurricular stuff, or, is there anything else you'd like to do? And apparently I said ballet, and he was like, oh, okay. And I was really fortunate. Dad, he's a country boy from New South Wales. He played tennis, rugby league, cricket, high level, and was an administrator and a coach in New South Wales cricket for many years. And he was just nothing but supportive. He,
Mhm.
I'm not sure whether, because obviously my grandmother, who was his mother-in-law,
Mhm.
was a professional dancer and was an RAD examiner, but also his father-in-law, who wasn't in Sydney at the time, but was also a ballet dancer. So he had a male figure who was a
Sure.
ballet, who had a career in it. I don't know whether that helped, but
Mm.
I know that I was very fortunate to just have that support from day dot.
Yeah. And you progressed all the way through um, the different levels with RAD. What point did you think this is what I want to do?
Well, I remember there was definitely pressure from my cricket coach and then my ballet teacher at some point to make a decision between what I wanted to do.
Right.
At that stage, I was probably 11 or 12, and um, Saturday was obviously a big day where we would do a lot of dance or cricket all day. And I
Yeah.
always wanted to play cricket on the Saturday. I'd do ballet, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, fine. But that meant obviously I was training in cricket. So that was okay to a degree. And I was, well, I pretty much just had sessions with dad on my own because I just loved it so much. We had so much fun. And that was sustainable up to a point. But then it became clear that in order to do either of them well and to a level of wanting to pursue it as a career, I had to
Mm.
dedicate time to it. So um, I don't really remember thinking, oh, this is what I want to do as a moment, but I
Yeah.
certainly remember thinking really long and hard about what it looked like over the next few years and then potentially sort of into a career. And I was absolutely drawn to the sort of mystique and magic of, the different performances, the different productions, different theaters in different parts of the world. And I think the fact that it was quite different to any of the other any of the other of my peers who were predominantly sports fans, and I was
Mhm.
pretty much the only boy in my ballet school, certainly at the same age.
Right.
At the time, there was one other for a period who was really, great fun and nice, but it was a quite singular sort of pursuit. And the fact that it was different and felt unique in some ways was, I think, appealing. And so I decided that's what I was going to do.
But not in Australia ultimately.
Well, yes, and that I think I was guided towards that as a goal by my teacher, who I think also pragmatically was like, okay, well, if you want to be a professional dancer and you want to be at the top level, you want to get a job, you want to be at the very sort of best schools. And at the time, certainly, the Royal Ballet School was producing, top talent, but also most of the people graduating were getting jobs.
Yeah.
It was a place where directors would go to see talent. So that was always sort of once I decided that that's what I wanted to do seriously, that was sort of the pathway. But then, quite seriously, I got accepted into the Australian Ballet School. But there was no financial support on offer. Um, I would have had to move interstate, moving away from family anyway. And I was offered a full scholarship to go to the Royal Ballet School. So in effect, other than the flights to get to London, my training was supported in a way that it wouldn't have been in Australia. So my dad says, it was actually cheaper for you to go to London, which seems crazy, but because of the support and identified as someone with talent and worth supporting, that made a lot of sense as well. So yeah.
It sounds, I mean, from the short time that we've been speaking, it sounds as if you, one of the aspects of your characters, you're unafraid to just strike out on your own. Being the only boy in the school, in essence, coming halfway around the world, taking your decision to go to the already mid-season. It seems to be a bit of a theme here. Would you say that you're quite bold when it comes to that sort of thing?
Well, it's interesting. I gave a talk at a school a few weeks ago, and we're talking about different values that the school wanted to that they wanted the students to embody. And they said, "Can you talk about them?" And I said, "Oh yeah, I know about commitment, I know about this and courage." And I was like, "Well, I'm not really a courageous person. I like to avoid conflict at all costs. I do all this." And I was talking to my wife about it. And she said, "Well, it's not that you're uncourageous. You've done some pretty bold things when you want to. It's more that I think you just wait, until everything's lined up, and if something's there, you're not afraid to go for the opportunity." And I think that's probably fair. I mean, now looking back, I think that's not insignificant decisions made that certainly had an element of risk. But in my mind, I think the most successful people, the people that I look up to and sort of want to be like, aren't afraid of grabbing those opportunities and preparing, I think, really well for those opportunities. And I think that's what I like to try and do, is that everything, I don't mind preparing. I don't mind doing the work. But if that opportunity comes up, I'm going to take it.
Right. Now, I have some questions which have come through, so we'll have a little pause. Again, they might be slightly random, but we know that LBC members like to ask their questions with they're always interesting, which is I find fascinating. So we've done the cricket one. Let's have a look at this. I'm going to come on to other projects. So that's from Murray, but from Rafi, which ties in with the sporting side of things, I think. Question is, did you enjoy sharing a dressing room with Vadim Montegira, for those of you, few people who don't know who that is, and who is better at basketball?
Oh, I very much enjoyed sharing a changing room with Vadim. That is, in all seriousness, the thing I probably missed the most. Seeing him every day, and that came about, through chance, really. We didn't share changing room when I first got promoted and he joined. We were in different rooms, and then things happened. People got promoted and people left, and it was pretty much dictated to me that I had to move into a room with and Nehemiah Kish was there at the time. He was principal there.
Oh yeah.
And Vadim. And I didn't know Vadim at all, really, because a weird thing happens in the Royal Ballet where, as a principal, you can be quite isolated and you rehearse on your own. So, might see people in class, but there's, over 100 dancers sometimes. So it's not that you always spend time or become close with everyone.
Yeah.
I knew Nehemiah a little bit, but not that much. I was like, oh gosh, I was comfortable in my room, but I was gonna have to go in with these people. Okay, fine. And I was the sort of least senior, so there's nothing I could do. I just had to go along. And I got in there, and it was Vadim. Well, yes, I miss Vadim a lot, but we became such good friends. He was my best man at my wedding,
Right.
and he tells the story. He told it in the speech, actually. He said, when we first got in the changing room together, we both weren't sure whether it was going to work out. He said, when you put like two lions in a cage together, they sort of walk around each other and they're sussing each other out. And we did that for a few weeks before eventually. I won't tell the whole story, but he sent me a text one day after a rehearsal, which he thought might have been a bit risky, because he was essentially, making fun of something I tried to do in rehearsal, which if I was very sensitive, I might have taken offense, but I laughed hysterically because it was just so funny. And that was it. He said we knew we were going to be friends after that. And And I realize I've skirted around the topic of who is best at basketball.
Indeed.
Uh, we have different skills. I'd say I'm the better shooter, but he's much taller and can jump higher than me, which I don't like to admit, but he can. So in different positions, we'd have our different strengths. But overall, I probably just pip him at the post.
Of course. And, where did you practice and where did you play?
Well, we had so I presume the questions come from someone who's seen us on social media. So shortly after I'd moved in, Redeem produced a sort of small basketball net and ball that he put up on the wall. And I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. And my sister played quite high level basketball in Australia. So I knew a little bit about it through that, but I hadn't really followed the NBA or anything. But Redeem really likes it. And so he's, something to talk about outside of ballet and other stuff. That was the thing. So yeah, we would have great fun and seemingly boundless energy for that. I'd walk past rehearsal where it'd be, maybe marking the end of a solo, and I'd hear him say, "Oh yeah, I'm a bit tired today." 10 minutes later, we'd be in the changing room like,
Excellent.
it was fun.
Well, change is as good as a rest, they say. So,
Really.
there are a couple of questions which I will come to, but they will sort of fit in because they're areas that I am going to ask. So don't champ away and chunder and say that he's not going to ask the question. He will. Okay, we've had a little break from that. Now we're going to get you to the UK, into the Royal Ballet School. You sound as if you've had a bit of a golden childhood and you're happy boy, hitting balls with sticks, jumping around, enjoying yourself immensely. Did that continue when you came to the UK?
I didn't settle in all that well at the Royal Ballet School.
Yeah.
I think there are probably a number of reasons for that, not least just new environment and being part of an institution which I'd just not been exposed to, I suppose,
Sure.
growing up. But I made some wonderful friends, and there's something about going through something like that, something as intense as that training, and that the at that young age, and I at the time I didn't feel young. I knew that's what I wanted to do, and I was like, right, I'm out of here. See you later. Going through, all of those things as a group, whether it's someone getting injured and not being able to complete their assessments, or maybe not being able to do the audition that they wanted to do, or the challenges that they faced, it was very intense. And so, no, I wouldn't say that it was the happiest time for me. I certainly knew why I was going through it, and I never lost sight of the goal, which was ultimately become a professional dancer. But it was quite challenging, yeah, for me just to sort of settle into it.
Yeah.
And
was that you came across for the upper school?
Yes,
right?
that's right. And I don't know whether one of the amazing things in my year group is that I think that we were a year group of say 15, 14 of them had come up from White Lodge, which is almost, I think, virtually unprecedented.
Yeah.
And I think the majority of them had been together for all of the 5 years. There might have been one or two that had come in, but they'd gone through from, all the way through. So, I joined this year group that was, I think sort of seen as a bit of a golden generation. I come in,
Right.
he's all right. Okay. And it was halfway through the year because I went to the Prix de Lausanne 2003. That was January, and then I started in the February at the Royal Ballet School on the back of that. So there was a lot that was sort of a bit unsettled, but there are plenty of positives as well. I mean, not least being able to go across the bridge and watch rehearsals or be part of performances. I remember being involved in Onegin.
Right.
Just watching Johann Campbell, watching him watch the Gremmen pas de deux was just, I could, if I wanted to, I could have just, I didn't, that would have been weird, but being so close and in on it and feeling it was amazing. So
Yeah.
there's plenty of good stuff as well.
So who was in your cohort? at the Royal Ballet School?
So Joseph Cayley, who's now in Australian Ballet, was in Birmingham. We joined Birmingham Royal Ballet together.
Yeah.
He then went to ENB. We had Alex Jones and Will Moore, who went
Gosh, yes.
to Stuttgart first, and then
Stuttgart, yes.
you just yeah, a lot of really, even I think pretty much everyone got a job around the world. James Forbat, Chevelle Dynot, who went to English National Ballet.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was quite the year group.
Yes.
Yeah.
And was it difficult, having been essentially, a boy on your own, then being surrounded by others, and there was that added layer of competition, comparison, all of that?
I often think about that, and I think, oh, was that part of the issue? But I don't think it was actually,
Mhm.
because I think I craved that a little bit.
Yeah.
I always wanted to know how I was placed around the world, or was I going to become a professional? And so I think I quite enjoyed that, and because there was someone was always better than me at something, maybe not overall, but God, that guy turns really well, or he's got a higher jump, or better tour. There was something to work towards. I love that. I was competitive by nature. I was like, right, that's a challenge. That's great. We can, I fed off that.
Yeah.
I think it may well have just been that the experience of the day to day and being in the Royal Ballet School wasn't what I had expected it to be, or had built
Sure.
up to be in my mind, which may just have been managing expectation.
Yeah.
But no, I quite enjoyed it, actually, being in that group, having not been exposed to other sort of peers at that level.
Yeah.
It certainly pushed me, I think, to get better as well.
And did you suffer from homesickness at all?
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Yes is the answer. For a variety of reasons, but I think mainly you just miss having I had a very supportive family.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
I miss the sort of day-to-day interactions, the fact that every conversation that we had after that felt like time pressured, or as though
Mhm.
very much someone's about to go to sleep and someone's waking up, and you're not matching energies, and just the uncertainty and unknown of a lot of it was very difficult. And
Mhm.
um, I yeah I often think about that time, and I go, gosh, I'm still in some ways homesick. I
Mhm.
think of people who I haven't seen for many years. I saw last year a cousin who I hadn't seen since I left.
Gosh.
Almost 20 years. And I was staying with her in her place. I was meeting her children, and I was excited, but I was also, gosh, is this going to be weird? What's it going to be like? I don't know this person. And I think within about 20 seconds of being in the car and driving along, she'd made fun of what I was wearing or something like that. And I was like, oh, this is the Teresa I know and love. We're going to be fine. um, it is that's, I think, as you get older, and I look back or I see people who are at the beginning of their careers, and you know that it's not just that period of time that's a sacrifice. And yes, you
Mhm.
may achieve the things that you want, but there it does come at a cost, a personal sacrifice. And then the real tough thing is when you get older and you realize that you weren't the only one that was sacrificing. Um,
Mhm.
I know that for my parents and for my sisters, that there was a challenge for them in different ways. And
Of course.
that's not an easy thing to sort of reconcile with, or sit there and be like, oh, I did that, and they did that to allow me to pursue this.
No.
So yeah, it's not all easy,
No.
but for me,
Yeah.
felt it is certainly worthwhile, and I'm lucky, that the family that I have um, certainly made me feel that as well, which is
Yeah.
yeah.
But whatever the experience of the Royal Ballet School, you decided to stay in the UK for your professional life. Why Birmingham Royal Ballet?
So in the second year of my training at the Royal Ballet School, I had the opportunity to, well, effectively, I almost sort of joined Birmingham Royal Ballet for, I think it was 2 6-week chunks, so 3 months of that entire year. I was on the, either in Birmingham or on the road with them doing performances. And I just had a really wonderful time there. I think the environment, suited my maybe personality, and it was, and I suppose an opportunity to see what a professional life looked and felt like, in a very realistic way.
Mm.
And so I just had a really positive experience of that. And I think it was the beginning of the second year at the Royal Ballet School. I did the Genet that was held in Birmingham.
Uh-huh.
And I'd seen the company, and I saw Robert Parker performing Apollo, and he just, to me, was very much sort of in the mold of the people that I'd looked up to, in terms of the performance and the sort of athleticism, and that's what I think is great about that's the sort of dancer I wanted to be. And so those two things together, I thought, oh, that feels like a place that I want to be. It's fortunate that David Bintley, he saw something in me that he felt would be suitable or would work well in the company. So when he offered the job, I was like, yeah, yes, straight away, yes, please. Can I start now?
And was it a good fit? I mean, I think we know it was a good fit, but for you as an individual.
No, absolutely. I think, I wouldn't be the dancer I was if I hadn't gone to Birmingham Royal Ballet. I think the just the time, the company that I joined, the opportunities that existed because of the people who had left sort of the season or two before, meant that myself and Joe Cayley were almost sort of put into soloist roles from the first day, because we just there was a lack in the company, and they needed people of that height and ability, and so we were given opportunities very early. But also the ethos, I think, of David and the staff that he had there at the time. I think of Marion Tate, Michael O'Hare. They really, to me, I think educated me on what ballet can be, and what the importance things are. Yes, technique is important, but that's the foundation. You practice all that, you get that right, but that's just the foundation. It's all this other stuff on top. And really, when you're on stage, you shouldn't be worried about this stuff. This is done. Do this other stuff here. And I love that. And I think because of the amount of performances we had, the opportunity to perform, in some cases in front of 20 people, not often, but it did happen. I'll tell you, there's a certain amount of freedom you get when you look out there. Not many people here. It was an education that I simply would not have got if I'd joined a big national company where sort of every performance is 2,000 seats and pressurized, or maybe a bigger cohort of dancers, so less opportunities to do a number of performances. So all of that, plus the rep that we were doing at the time, I mean, they still have it. A lot of the classical repertoire there with Sir Peter Wright, which I think those productions are absolutely, nothing's perfect, but it's so close to perfection. And about what the ballets should be and how they should be demonstrated. Plus, we had a lot of David's choreography, which was interesting and fun. Certainly as a young sort of man coming through to get into, running around in Doc Martens sometimes. Long hair. It was just, there was just so much in it. We I know nowadays there's lots around it, but I was able to do the role of Petrushka,
right?
Which I think I was maybe 20, 21.
Gosh.
Which at the time I was like, yeah, I'm ready. Let's go. That the opportunity to do something like that with such heritage and importance, I think just really informed who I
Yeah.
was to become and what I value.
And when did you feel? So you joined in 2005?
Five, I think.
Five. Let's agree on five anyway. Um, so, yeah. When did you feel that you were beginning to? I mean, you've partly answered the question. You were beginning to move up and get roles. You said it was quite early on. Was there a particular role where you thought, aha, was it Petrushka?
I'm not sure whether it was any one particular thing.
Mm,
I'm trying to think if there was any one particular thing. I think that was, as someone who thrives on progress, I think that was a really great thing about BRB as well. Is that I
yeah.
felt like things were coming. We had a big enough rep that I sort of only repeated, I think maybe once or twice. Some of the big classics that came back. It always felt like we were doing new things and
Yeah.
developing. So I don't think there was anything that I thought, oh, I'm on my way. But I always
Mm,
felt that that David was trusting me to give me some meaty things,
mm,
and that there was always that pathway. It felt, yeah, very much as though that I could well have been a principal there. I was certainly given a lot of responsibility in the last 2 years that I was
yeah.
there to do principal roles, and I very much enjoyed that, and yeah, I think I would have done very well there had I stayed. Nothing's ever certain, but it just, yeah, it always just felt like I was being challenged and given those opportunities.
Did you, are you a dancer? I'll speak in general terms. Are you a dancer who thrives on knowing your partner and developing that relationship?
Um, I, yes, I think there's certainly yeah, there's something about that that I enjoyed and developing.
Mm,
And I have to give a lot of credit to Natasha Outred, who
right.
was in the Royal Ballet and then joined Birmingham Royal Ballet when I was there, and we were partnering together quite a lot.
Mm,
I remember we were put together for Nutcracker. I don't think it was my debut, but maybe the second year I did it. And we rehearsed and worked really hard and did the first show. And I thought the show went reasonably well. There was certainly nothing major in there. Um, and we turned up for our next rehearsal, and we started rehearsing. And she said, "Oh, actually, why don't we think about this?" And I was like, hang on, I thought we'd agreed on, a way to do this. But she said, yeah, but, we could always think about something else. We can develop it further. We can add some stuff, or, this is now secure, but where does it go to from here? And I was like, this is new. I very much like to minimize risk in my performances. I was like, right, I need to know that I'm okay doing this. I don't really want to like push so hard that I'm going to maybe fall over. No. Um, but I from her learned that you should all, which is strange because in class I was always trying to get better.
mhm,
And I think maybe for rehearsals and performances, like, let's just make sure that we do this well and um, yeah, we know what we're doing. But she introduced me to that element of really sort of developing further. So I did enjoy, um, yeah, working with someone who I was familiar with,
yeah,
because I think then there was the opportunity to sort of enhance even further from there.
yeah.
Um, yeah.
So you said that you could have stayed at Birmingham, but you didn't. So where did that move come from?
So I think the catalyst for that was I guested with the Australian Ballet. I think it was maybe the end of my fourth year or beginning of fifth year with Birmingham Royal
Yeah.
Ballet. I did Campbell, and I'd known David McAllister, who was the director of the Australian Ballet, for like probably from the age of like 12 or 13, and I'd sort of loosely kept in contact with him when I was at the school. I thought maybe the Australian Ballet might be an opportunity
Mm,
graduating. Um, but anyway, I'd gone over to guest with them, and I think just the experience I had there at the time, they 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 just worked really hard. They
right.
operating at a really, really high level in class, in rehearsals, in performances, that looking at, you know, what we were doing in Birmingham, it just felt like the level sort of application at that level, that day in, day out, was different. The intensity, I think, was different. And the time that I was there, which was maybe about 3 weeks, I felt like I was really pushed, and I saw an improvement
Right.
because of that. And I spoke to David McAllister at the end, well, sort of at the back end of my time there with him. And I said, I think I'm ready for a change, actually. You know, this has really inspired me. I really want to. And I pretty much was like, so I'm ready to come and join you if you want, because I've had such a good experience here. And I was a little bit offended when he was like, I'm not going to offer you a job. I was like, what do you mean you're not going to offer me? Perfect. I'm Australian. You know, how dare you? But he said, no, I don't think you've been over there. You're right where it's happening. You know, you should, see what else you can do there. Don't come back, to Australia too soon.
Gosh.
Oh, okay. And he said, why don't you try the Royal Ballet? And I was like, oh yeah, great. Why don't you try the Royal Ballet? Yeah, great idea. Thank you. No one goes to the Royal Ballet, especially, from BRB at that time. The last person to do it, I think, was Darcy, from
Darcy, yes.
Sadler's Wells, and she was pretty good. So
It's all right.
I was like, I don't think that's really a possibility, David. He said, well, you'll never know if you don't try it. I was like, and so I came back, and it was sort of, it planted a seed. And but I think the thing that, really, the thing that stuck with me is that, I wanted to get the very best out of myself as a dancer. And whilst there were so many brilliant things and positive things about being in Birmingham, which I think, maybe slightly leaning towards like performance and experience and being on stage, was I challenging myself enough? Was I in an environment that was going to push me technically to get to the level that I really, what was I going to fulfill my potential technically? And how could I do that? And I remember, after a bit of a process, Monica Mason offered me the job of as a soloist. And at that time, I was doing predominantly principal stuff in Birmingham. And, I think at the back end of that year, I would be very close to being promoted to principal. And I thought about it for about 30 seconds, and I just realized that the thing that I wanted was to be around the very top level people. And I did, I'd seen performances of, Carlos, Johan, Tamara, all of them. And I could see that they were, that very, very top level dancer. I knew they did class, I knew they did rehearsal, I knew they were on stage. I'm like, well, why are they that much better than, anyone else? And it's, the small margins at that point, but they are better. They're exceptional. I wanted to get in with them and be in the studio, find out what was their sort of secret sauce. And it was kind of nice to see, but also just, wow. And there's no secret sauce. They just work harder than anyone else. And that is incredibly difficult to match because they just focus. So it was a great thing to do. And I think there was a period of time when I was in the Royal Ballet where I wasn't, well, I was quite sure that I wasn't going to be a principal, and I would not have resented or regretted it at all, because I knew that I had absolutely pushed myself technically to as close as my potential as I could have ever hoped to have gotten.
Yeah,
and that meant just as much to me as anything else, which was a nice thing to feel.
But you were made a principal.
Well, I was, which was, which is why I think that whole period of time felt like a bonus. Because there was a very real possibility that sort of 12 months before then that, that was going to sort of be my last year at the Royal Ballet. I was sort of thinking about doing other things and having opportunities to do those things as well. And I performed, I think, with a freedom that year because of it. Because I thought, well, I'm going to make the most of this and just enjoy it for what it is. And I remember vividly, actually, being on stage. We're doing Within the Golden Hour.
Oh yeah.
And I turned around, and there was this backdrop, and just I turned around and I had a moment where I didn't have to do terribly much when I was on stage, so a bit of a pause. Look at the size of this thing and look at the detail. It's amazing. Wow. And you can be so focused on what you have to do as a dancer, technically be wrong and be in the right place and the right time. Sometimes you don't see those details. And it's just such a lovely. I was like, wow, this is fantastic. What a great thing, a privilege to be here. How good. Because I think I was pretty much getting ready to say, oh, thank you very much. It's great. Yeah, huge bonus.
And then you had many seasons doing some fantastic roles, but also giving some wonderful performances. So had the plan come right, where it did up everything, and you felt that your technique and your artistry then shifted up another gear?
I think a lot of the work, technically sort of happened prior to becoming a principal. I think, some of the challenging roles I was doing. I had done some principal roles as a first soloist, worked with coaches, been cast alongside or in the same roles as those people that I was trying to emulate or wanted to learn from. So I think a lot of that had happened, and I was getting a lot of satisfaction from doing that.
Right.
Um, and then, when you become a principal, I think there is a lot of pressure on some people to sort of maintain, you become a principal, then what?
Yeah.
So, you're sort of thinking, well, these people coming up, they're going to come next, they're going to take my work. Which, sometimes there were occasions where I felt a little bit like that, insecure. I can't believe I didn't get cast for that. What does that mean? But I think because of the previous experience and the experience leading up to that, I was able to stay relatively pragmatic about those things and just enjoy things as they came up. That's not to say I didn't knock on the door a few times. Sorry, explain this one to me. Um, which I'm sure if Kevin was around, he'd be like, yeah, he did.
So so what are your desert island roles, the ones that you did, which you think, yes, they really are very special?
I remember the first performance I did as a principal was Colas in La Fille Margade.
Uh-huh.
And that was the first ballet that I saw at the Royal Opera House.
Right.
When I came over to do the Prix de Lausanne, I saw Irek Mukhomedov and Miyako Yoshida, and I'd never seen it before. And I just sat there, just absolutely loving it. I just thought it was brilliant, and they were great. And I loved Widow Simone. The clog dance was just right. It was just fantastic. I loved it, and so that full circle moment was lovely. But I also just I think I was probably, sort of a sweet spot in terms of, my age and the time and energy I could put into it. I love doing all the sort of extra training stuff, and I, just was able to just throw myself absolutely full pelt into it. And physically, I was probably close to my peak then, where I just didn't worry about some of the technical challenges because I was like, I feel confident that I have this. Of course, things happen and there are challenges, but I always felt that I could get out of trouble
Right.
during those sort of peak physical years. So that was certainly one. And then the other sort of two. Well, I think the things that the ones that I really remember are things like Albert and Giselle, which came about after quite a disappointing period of time where I wasn't cast or I was told that we've got a list of people who we're going to put on before you as well. I was thinking, shit, that's a lot of people to push down the stairs. But it just so happened, not that I push people down the stairs, but things
No, of
happen.
course.
I got the opportunity, and I would again, I was in good shape physically. I wasn't worried about that, and I had seen it a number of times, and was very clear in how I wanted to do the role. That and the same when I did Degrieux in Manon as well. Having the opportunity of doing Lescaut for 2 or 3 runs of it, seeing the role, seeing the whole production, and being very clear about how I would. Go about portraying the character and the dancing. If I'd ever been given that opportunity. And so, just here actually in the office is a picture that I have of myself sitting looking at Anthony Dow in a studio. which would have been sort of 3 or 4 rehearsals in of learning the role of Degreux.
Mhm.
And he's written a little thing on it, just saying that it was a great pleasure and rewarding experience for me to work with you. And I'm like, that was one of the highlights. Honestly, I think that period of time was the most enjoyable I'd had in the studio.
Mhm.
And there were a few, but yeah. So those roles I think stand out for a variety of reasons. But really nice memories to have.
Well, I'm going to speak purely selfishly and say that 2 came to my mind when I was thinking about questions. One was France and Coppelia, which I thought they were absolutely outstanding in.
Thank you.
And the other one was in Dance at a Gathering.
Oh gosh, Dance at a Gathering, yeah. Yeah, wow. Yeah. Well, that the first time I did that, the first time we'd done that in a long time,
Yeah,
was early 2020. And I remember we just finished our run of shows, and I danced with Manon and Nunez. Fantastic. How good is this? And we're in the wings, and we're waiting to go on to take our bows. And I said to her, I was like, oh, I feel like, this is sort of ballet you could retire on. Like, I'd retire happy on this. And about 4 weeks later, obviously we're all in lockdown, and Marinella, because she hit me and she said, "Don't say things like that." She's quite superstitious. Don't say things like that. And she messaged me about a month later. She was like, "You did this." Oh, sorry. No, that's a brilliant role, and that was, an interesting period of rehearsal as well, because we had Ben, how do you say his last name? Huyes, Huyes, and he really pushed us, and he really pushed me as well. At times where is this personal? I wasn't sure, but by the time it came to the performances, I was just completely certain of what I was trying to do. Felt very, just across it, and was able to really enjoy it. And then, yeah, there's some magic moments in there. But just being on that stage.
Yeah. And is there that feeling of camaraderie between the dancers? Because it feels like it has the feeling of people know each other, but
no, there absolutely is. And I don't know whether it was by design, but a lot of the rehearsals we had were sort of separate initially, and then we came together and we sort of almost shared what we'd been doing. And there are opportunities to look and see your partner or the person who you're working with, or another member of the cast, and then it all comes together, that beautiful sort of ending. It's hard not to feel like you've gone through something, small level, with those people, and you absolutely get that sense of camaraderie.
Well, I mean, it's one of those ballets where that feeling is shared with the audience, because watching Dance at a Gathering, when it's well danced, you also feel as if you've been through something as well. You don't quite understand what's going on.
Exactly, and that's the thing that I most enjoyed about it when I watched it, is that I don't know what's happened. Like, it's not explicit,
No,
but it's something, and that's beautiful. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Now, I've got a question from Emily here, who is asking, are there any experiences you would have liked to have had as a dancer that you weren't able to, or roles or places that you... So it's the converse of what I said with the desert island roles.
I think the opportunities I had to perform all over the world, I can't think of anywhere that I think, oh, I wish I'd performed there. I saw performances at Palais Garnier, which is just amazing. And would you have loved to perform there? Of course. But being part of the Paris Opera, how that felt, the realities of it, I'm like, well, maybe not sure. Love them, but all of that. So I'm very happy with that. The one, or maybe two. Yeah, I think it would have been nice, I think, at one point to have a crack at Miley. I would have very much enjoyed that. And
That's exactly what I would have said. I wish you'd done very well.
I was, you know, I was a little cranky that I didn't get the chance. But you know, that's the way it goes sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you know, if someone said now, oh, you know, would you have hung on for another year to do it? I would have said no, because I wanted to be in good shape. I wanted to be able to do it confidently. And I'd say the other one that I was and I knew at the time that I was disappointed about was Rhapsody.
Uh,
That was a difficult one
mm.
to swallow. Not least because Mikhail Baryshnikov is just my absolute idol. Like I just everything, you know, anything he did, I was like, I want to be like that. You know, what would Misha do? And I think at the time that I got that I thought that would have been a really, you know, a good chance for me to do it, I was right in my sort of that sweet spot in terms of fitness, and so I would have very much enjoyed doing that, or at least trying to at that time. But if you'd have said, "Do you want to do it as they're doing it right now?" I say, "Absolutely not. That's so hard." And you need to, you know, it's a huge challenge, and
Yeah.
it needs to be done at the very, very top level by someone who's completely in charge of themselves and the space around them. So, yeah, those two. But I'm not bitter about it at all. I'm fine. But yeah, those two.
Yeah. There's Jane says that her favorite performance was Age of Anxiety
Oh, really?
in
Wow.
the Bernstein Centenary.
Yeah. Gosh, that was tricky music. Yeah, gosh.
In what way was that tricky?
The music.
Right.
Yeah, it's yeah, it was challenging just to hear it and understand it and get it right. Yeah.
Yeah, Bernstein is not the most straightforward, shall we say. Um, now, are there any other questions? I think I've had a couple pop in, some observations actually. I think Jane keeps saying that's why I admire you. That's why I admire. She admires you so much.
Oh.
If I can get the right pronouns there. And several people thanking you very much for your artistry and your wonderful performances. So there's plenty of things going on. And somebody's saying, yes, BRB tours, which is a marvelous thing. Pity that the Royal Ballet doesn't. That's my little coda to that one. But there we go. There was a question which I did want to cover, which was, here we are, projects outside. So you did The Limit with Francesca Hayward, Alexander Campbell Productions. Is that going to carry on, given that you have this massive new role?
Well, there's certainly an appetite, you know, from the ROD. They said, "Oh, it would be great if you could do, you know, continue to do these things and be involved." Yeah. And you know, I think there could be real benefit, you know, to being involved in sort of new work and creating and being, you know, sort of still involved in those things. I think, you know, there will certainly take a period of time to sort of get settled in the role, and I like to do things properly. So I felt split, or you know, I wasn't able to fully focus on understanding what the opportunities are at the RAD. I'd find that hard, but there've been a couple of things and sort of inquiries about, you know, doing some new work, which I would like to do, but I think it would have to be the right time and the right. But I've very much enjoyed it. I think well, that whole experience, I think, gave me some, well, I suppose the confidence to say yes, I'll apply for this role.
Yeah.
Because I had gone through, you know, just so many new things, as you know, sort of conceiving an idea and pushing it through, creating pitches, gaining, you know, funding for all those sorts of things that I'd never had to think about or do. You know, I knew, I was aware that they happened, but the practice of it and doing it was something I very much enjoyed, and I really enjoyed actually being able to advocate for other people. You know, one of the things I think that's really tough on ballet dancers is that, you know, you're constantly having to sort of sell yourself to, you know, your director or choreographer and sort of stand up and say, no, I should do this because I why to say it for someone else who was like, that person's really good, that person worked really hard. I was, yeah. The team, the limit team, they called me Pitbull Campbell because once I was on it, I was like, that's it, I'm not letting go. But I was much more comfortable doing that for other people that I believed in their work than I was ever for myself. I struggled with that. I found that very hard to do.
Right.
Tried, because we have to, but yeah, I love doing it for other people. So maybe I should be an agent.
You never know the next step at some point.
Yeah.
I think we've come more or less to the end. If there's any final question at all, don't hesitate. I will read it. I can find it. Thank you very much for your insights. Very interesting, and very best wishes to you for the future.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Well, that's a good question to end on. Have you danced or have you not danced with Claire? And is it a regret if you haven't?
Well, we have danced together actually in
Good.
Lesko and Mistress.
Oh yeah.
And the shows that we did were with Francesca as Manon and Federico as Degrio. And I remember, this is before we were together or anything like that. I remember watching Claire performing as Mistress, and I always thought she was, fantastic, one of the, the best sort of proponents of the role. And I always thought, oh, it'd be really great to do that with her. So I was delighted when we were cast together, and it was so much fun. Because she knew what she was doing and she was great, and with Frankie and Fede, it was just a really wonderful cast. There are only a couple of moments where we were doing something and she sort of gave me an instruction. I thought, I'm pretty sure you wouldn't talk like that to someone else, but okay, fine. The only regret I would say is that we didn't ever get to do Prodigal Son, which we were cast together.
Yes.
Do. And I would have loved to have done that ballet for so many reasons, and I would have loved to have done that ballet with Claire for plenty more.
Yeah.
So that would be a regret, but we did get to dance together, and it was a good role, I think, or good roles for us to do together. I'm not sure we would ever have been that couple that were happy to, or dealt with it healthily, working for 6 hours a day together and then going home. I'm not sure that would have suited. So it was a positive experience and all worked out well.
Excellent. Well, I think that is our time. I must apologize to Fiona, who did ask a question. I didn't get to it, so I did see it, but apologies to Fiona. Susan.
Thank you so much. That was absolutely fascinating. Alexandra, it's obvious that the RAD is in very good hands. Your tenacity and your passion and your open personality. I mean, the RAD can only benefit from that, and the world of dance and all these young people who are coming up. What a great inspiration you will be to them. So thank you so much for a wonderful conversation. And Gerald, thank you for asking such great questions. And the whole thing was so relaxed and everything. I could have sat here all night. I can't believe we've come to the end. But thank you both so much. That's just been fascinating. Just quickly to remind everyone, there's a lot coming up on LBC's calendar. There are a few places left for the English National Ballet School visit next week, and it will be our last chance to see Viviana Durante before she leaves the English National Ballet School. Just organized on the 10th of July, we're going to have Northern Ballet's Joseph Taylor as our guest, and he is dancing with London City Ballet this summer, and Christopher Marney will be doing the interview, so that should be fun. And coming up in August is Nina Anshvili from the Georgian State Ballet. In September, Hope Muir from National Ballet of Canada. Both these companies will be dancing at Sadler's Wells, so it'll be a great opportunity to meet their artistic directors. And in October, we'll have an in-person event with Matthew Ball from the Royal Ballet. So lots coming up. But tonight was about Alexander and about the RAD and about his wonderful career. And thank you again, both Gerald and Alexandra, for a great night. And thanks to all of you for tuning in and being with us. And we look forward to seeing you all again very soon. Thanks, everyone. Take care and have a very good night. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.